Epik Mellon podcast, conversations with the real humans behind broadband networks, cybersecurity, and the future of communications. Brought to you by QA Cafe.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Epik Mellon podcast. I think I stopped counting the numbers, which is great. Like I got high enough that I'm like, whatever. I used to be like, this is episode blah blah blah, but now I don't know. So, um, my name is Jason Waltz from QA Cafe, and here I have Dmitri Vellikok from F-Secure, who I've wanted to get on the show for quite a while, actually. So, I'm glad to finally have you on. It's going to be fun.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Thanks for having me.
yeah. As usual, Epik Mellon is brought to you by QA Cafe, and as such, the views expressed by myself or by Dimitri on this podcast don't reflect those of QA Cafe or its ownership, and it goes same for F-Secure, so that we're all covered and we can talk about whatever we want. And at the same time, the podcast is brought to you by the three great products that we have at QA Cafe, and that includes CD Router, the industry standard test platform for broadband gateways, Wi-Fi devices, and other customer premises equipment, with thousands of predefined test cases that fit right into your CI/CD process. And now a boatload of certifications that we're supporting, including Purpleware certification, USP agent certification, Tier 69 certification, and a bunch of other things. There's an anecdote I always like to share. Um, it was I was at a broadband forum meeting, and there was somebody there who was not a CD Router customer, and they were new members. And during the meeting, he was like coding IPv6 tests, and I was like, "Why are you doing? Why are you putting yourself through that hell when you could already be doing it?" Our other products are around packet captures. That includes CloudShark, which is the way to collaborate on network packet captures, keep them safe and secure, and keep their history intact. So you can search across them and find them and make instant response that much easier, while also having a much slicker web-based interface for things like Wireshark and Zeek and Suricata, all built into one solution. And then just now, it's been kind of reverse engineered, but the guts of that is Packet Viewer, which allows anybody to slap that web-based packet viewing functionality into your own application. And we just ported that back into CloudShark as of CloudShark 4.0. So now CloudShark is using Packet Viewer, even though the idea for Packet Viewer came out of CloudShark. So everything worked out in the end. All right. So how are you feeling? We were just talking about, it's been 3 weeks since NetworkX. Have you gone anywhere else since then? Or
No, fortunately enough, I've been able to stay home, which is surprising compared to like my usual travel schedule. So
I know. I know. And there's no way. Like we were talking before the show started about having kids or not having kids. And like there's no way I could keep up with the travel circuit of some people out there. It's just not a reality anymore. You know.
yeah, like after COVID, it all got sidetracked. Like I used to travel maybe like once a quarter or something like that. Like after COVID, it was like once a month or sometimes every week. Like it's getting crazy.
No, it's weird that it sort of like snapped back,
Mm-hmm.
like almost bigger than it was before. And I was talking about this last time on the last podcast that like I thought it was going to go the other way, right? And we'd all be like, "Oh, look, we can all do this virtually," but it turns out that people did not want that at all. And it came
Exactly.
back like,
And even virtually, I mean, people are like way more on video all the time. Like you want to see the person, you want to have at least some sort of an interaction. Like I'm working from home, so I don't see a lot of people outside of FaceTime on camera, right?
right. Yeah. No, and I've known some people, who really are just exclusively working from home, and they always have, like, for the company that they work for. So it's a very different experience. Like it's like getting to know people and stuff. It's almost like the reason why it is that people crave going to shows,
Exactly. Yeah.
you know? Yeah. Well, so that's cool. I mean, so you, I mean, just because we've never had this conversation before, like I've had you on webinars and stuff, but sort of how did you get to being what you're doing right now at F-Secure? And where are you located right now, actually?
Well, let's start with F-Secure first. So I've
Yeah.
been with F-Secure since forever, like 16 years, I think now. So it's been quite a long journey, and I started back in Finland. So F-Secure is a Finnish cybersecurity company.
Hmm.
We specialize specifically in in consumer segment, and we're working practically almost only with service providers. So that's majority of our revenue is coming from service providers. And I started very early on, well, within like a Finnish sales teams, and then went to like international business development, some product management. Then I moved to the leadership team, moved to US at some point, like 10 years ago. And I moved to New Jersey at the time. We had an office there. Then COVID happened. We closed the office. I moved to Connecticut. And now
So you're not that far from me at all.
Well, I used to be close to you. Hold on.
Yeah.
I just moved 3 months ago to South Carolina.
Oh, okay.
I'm in Charleston, Carolina now. I love the area. Like Connecticut got a bit cold during the last winter, so I was like, no, I can't take this.
No, and my wife's from New Mexico, and she sort of goes back and forth between enjoying it, like the pros and cons of winter, right? Where like, it's cold, right? And she doesn't like that part, obviously, but like the fact that it's like almost a mandatory rest period because she's in catering. So like at least there's this point of time where like things just go down for just a little bit of time so everybody can breathe, right? Did you
Exactly.
did you get used to dealing with it? But you were in Finland before then though, right? And obviously your winters are way worse than ours.
Oh yeah. I was born and raised in Finland, so I'm kind of, I should be used to the cold. So,
Yeah.
but you get used to good things and try to forget the bad ones. So I always try to go like as far west or south as possible. So
Right. Did you guys get hit by the hurricane?
no, luckily we were spared. So we had some colleagues though who were in the regions that were impacted quite heavily, but it bypassed like North Carolina, so we were not impacted.
Oh,
Just,
good.
Some debris in the yard.
Yeah, because it was massive. I've never expected that before. I was on the podcast with Mike from Xeros, like as it was hitting. He was like, "Well, we'll see." Anyway, so one of the things I was going to ask, so like you're saying, you guys are selling most of the service providers. Is that all of F-Secure?
Right.
F-Secure is pretty big, right? You have multiple sort of
Well,
targets.
yeah, kind of. So we used to be a bigger company, right? So about 2 years ago, we split into two different companies. So there was a bigger F-Secure that handled like the enterprise segment, the operator segment, direct business, and so forth. So a couple of years back, we decided to go our own ways, and we enlisted companies as two separate entities on the stock exchange. So there's a company
Okay.
which is now part of the. They're doing the enterprise side, so like managed detection and response, enterprise security, and things like that. Like the ability things for enterprises. And we decided that okay, we're going to be fully consumer based, and we're focusing only on the ISP channel, basically. And so once that split happens, now we're a smaller company, so we're about 550 people at the moment. All practically most of the people based in Finland. Obviously, a lot of like satellite offices around the world. We have about 20 different locations where we have people. In US, like we're scattered all around. And we decided to focus specifically on the operator channel. Actually, we did that kind of already like 20 years back. So we started in like 2003. We were like, okay. There's this niche that is underserved because operators were looking for, what else can we provide to the consumers besides the broadband connection or besides the mobile broadband and so forth. And we kind of carved out that for ourselves. At the moment, I think we have like 55% market share in that area. And kind of everything we do is kind of tailored specifically towards the operators. So it's a little bit of a different approach if you compare it to some other like large name cybersecurity companies. Because they have so many things on their plate, right? And they have such a big like retail presence and so forth. They're typically focusing more on, serving their own customers, right? So we're focusing on serving the ISP's customer base. So we're not kind of directly competing with them, and which gives us a big competitive edge. We're not trying to go and sell to the same customer base
No, because that is huge a huge market, not just from the sense that there's a lot of players, but the players are big, like very
Exactly.
big, right?
Yeah.
And that's sort of been the position for us too, because it's like, yes, we could try to go down the route of turning CloudCheck into a a a full cybersecurity solution that is actually competing with those things, but that would be a very, very, very big project versus making something that just sort of complements what all they do, right?
Yeah, exactly. And there's enough space in the ISP segment that there's still like I'm still surprised. Like I've been doing this for 16 years, and I'm still surprised to find operators who don't offer any kind of security for their customers. You just get basically a naked pipe with that. You get all the trash from the web directly into
Yeah.
your
But that's
browsing.
evolved over time, right? So like, I mean, if you guys have been doing it that long, what is that evolution? How has that evolution been? Like, when were the operators aware of it? Was it the big guys first? Were they kind of doing that?
Well, since we're a European company, obviously that's where we started from. But we actually got a big presence globally quite fast. So we established a US office already in '98 and in Japan around the same time. And we kind of managed to secure that market and also kind of tailor the proposition a little bit kind of around the operators, right? So it's not, everything we do, like all the marketing and positioning and go-to-market planning and all that, it's all kind of, okay, how do you sell this forward? How do we make it easy for your salespeople, for your
Right,
support
right,
people to
right,
say
right.
and so forth? And that
Yeah.
way, it kind of set us apart in the way, and we kind of became an experts in this field. Not to say that, I'm not saying that the technologies are significantly different. Obviously, we like to say that we are the best in everything we do. But, if you look at many other cybersecurity companies, a lot of them are providing similar things. So for us, like the latest big thing that we're now focusing very heavily on is scam protection, because that's what
Hmm.
everybody is talking about. It's all over the news. You got scammed, your money was stolen.
It's a lot. Yeah.
Exactly, there's a lot, and now it's become a mainstream in the way that you see, like, big news media outlets like talking about it practically every day. So we're trying to tackle that angle as much as possible by adding, like, SMS scam, email scam, WhatsApp scams, telegrams, all those kind of different channels that you can kind of get those links or get those files, or like social engineering requests and so forth, and try to kind of understand how that part works and protect the customers as much as possible and create awareness, which is actually the most important part, because when you tell people that something is happening, they're more kind of vigilant and try to understand like it themselves
Yeah.
more, rather than just, if you just tell them, hey, there's this bad thing happening without explaining them what it means for you, nobody really cares. People
Right,
don't really, like in all our surveys, everybody is saying that, when you ask them, like, yeah, will you protect yourselves? Yes, everybody wants to protect themselves. But then when you actually look at like how much are they doing about it, it's not a lot. So you need to kind of
Oh,
guide them through, like, okay, you
right.
need to really do this. You need to install this. You need to activate it. You need to take this service into use. And same thing for the ISPs as well. It's surprising to still find, like, especially smaller operators. All the big operators have handled this area quite well, but like some operators don't provide like any security for their customers, like even on the network level, where they could just do everything, something very simple for everybody that would be automatically out of the box. They still don't act on that and don't
Oh, that's
monetize that.
interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting because you would think that they would treat themselves as a giant enterprise network. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
with hundreds of millions of users.
No, but I mean, they protect their networks well,
Yeah.
right? Themselves. But then that's a different thing from protecting the end user.
Right.
Uh, they're securing the infrastructure. They're making sure that all their like hubs and distribution points and all that's secured, because they have to do that. That's like critical infrastructure, right? That
Right.
you
Right.
mess
Yeah.
with that. But then securing the end user is somehow separate topics, separate teams, lower budgets, and so forth,
Hmm.
which is sometimes surprising. But at the same time, like I would say in the past 5 years, like 10 to 5 years, there's been a significant increase in operators kind of trying to do something about this. And I would say the best of them are actually trying to leapfrog even ahead of some of the cybersecurity companies and some of the providers like us, and try to like build things that are better and try to even compete with some of the big names.
It's interesting. So, like, I always got this keeps coming up. This whole story keeps coming up, and as you know, part of it is being driven by by this story around the gateway and it being this centerpiece of that stuff, right? Um, but ultimately, it's always been sort of like I feel like it's always been sort of because the lines of demarcation of ownership are not clear, then nobody is taking ownership for it, right? And that's, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of the situation with a lot of the operators, is because because the consumer network was the consumer network for so long, and that's where internet access came from, and the operator is the operator, and they're like, after this point, I don't care, right?
Exactly.
The people who believe that, or not believe that, but you know, that's how they came into things,
Mhm.
are now coming up against the reality that it has to be the other way around. Meanwhile, you have the consumer side who is like, well, I'm getting this from the operator. They should be the ones that take it.
Yeah, exactly. And that actually comes very clearly through our research as well. That, you know, when we ask consumers, I think it was something in the ballpark of like 65% of consumers expect the operator to be providing some sort of a security from them. It's not like they want it or they want to buy it or anything like that.
I never said that out loud.
Exactly. And for the consumer, you know, as you say, it's somehow like, because the internet comes from this company that I'm subscribing to, so the security must come somehow through that same connection, that same cable that is
Right.
coming to my house. It must be secured, right? That's the expectation from the consumers. And then especially when we talk about the router space, that's where it gets like, I think exactly as you say, that there's this demarcation point that, okay, up until this device, everything is good. But like whatever you do with that device and with the internet connection, that's kind of up to the end user. We cannot control that. And there are these whole notions of, you know, net neutrality, and we cannot really filter things and whatnot. But, you know, there's a difference between kind of doing some limitations as opposed to trying to protect the customer, right? Which
Right.
what we try to do. So that's how we actually moved into the whole router space. I think we started like 7-8 years ago. We realized that, hey, okay, there are all these IoT devices in households, and, you know, smart TVs started to become popular there, Wi-Fi connected doorbells and cameras and all that. And we were like, okay, our endpoint security is not going to work here, right? We need to figure out something new. And we started doing some proof of concepts and so forth. And quite fast, like I think it was like 6 years ago, we signed up a couple of our first partners who were willing to roll that out to the market. And again, that, you know, that's the part that is protecting the end user, right? We're protecting what they are doing within their home Wi-Fi, within their connection. So that's the piece that they can monetize, because that's the additional value that we provide to the operator subscriber.
Right. And you're saying that you are sort of helping the operators understand how to market that better. Are they? I remember Mika mentioned that you guys also have, like, you know, iPhone apps and stuff like that that are also running and helping the whole process. How is that understood by the end user? Is that just being branded as like an operator app, or is F-Secure now a name that they're recognizing, or is it?
In most cases, like especially, you know, if we look at like tier 2, tier 1 operators, the larger ones, they usually want to promote their brands, right? They usually embed our solutions within their own applications, whether that's our endpoint security or the router security. Like everything we do is available as an API, and you can basically go and build the user experience that you want. But the key thing there is that because the operators, they don't necessarily know kind of how to build the good cybersecurity experience, right? They know how to build a great customer experience in other areas, right? But the cybersecurity part is kind of new to them. So that's where we step in and kind of consult them that, hey, this is how you do it. This is how we have done it. This is the best practices that we have seen others doing. These are the things you shouldn't do, and so forth.
Right. What are some of those things? Like in terms of like on on the level of how the end user understands that their network needs to be secured and is being secured by
Mhm.
this process, like what are some of those good practices and not bad practices? I imagine it's more just like stuff that doesn't work, right?
Yeah, I think like on generic level or on a high level, I think one of the key things that we're kind of promoting, and it comes actually, it goes back to like a basic cybersecurity hygiene and practices, like the onion model, right? Where you're trying to protect something within and then you add layers on top of it, trying to
Mhm.
secure the customer from multiple angles, because the bad guys are trying to go through the easiest point of entry, right? And that might be on the network, that might be in your device, that might be in your home router.
Might be a
And you
person.
Exactly, it might be person, it might be social engineering attempt, and so forth. So our kind of recommendation is always to kind of add those layers in. So that cybersecurity is present in kind of every touch point basically that the customer has.
Okay.
So whether that's their device that needs to have something installed so it protects it from malware and so forth, or it's their home with IoT devices protected, or on the network level as well, because the network level, when you're deploying security like in the cloud on DNS level, for example, then it protects the whole customer base at once. The customers don't have
Right.
to do
Right.
anything. That's the
Right.
big thing. Like if you ask consumer to do something and them to go and install, activate, make sure it works, it has the right settings and so forth, that is just not happening as often as
No,
people.
every single step that you add is going to be one where people don't, eventually people don't do it. And that goes for everything, right?
Yeah.
There used to be this this guy back in back in the day, he had a site called webpagesthatsuck.com. And his whole premise was that, of course, he was talking about a sales website, right? But his whole premise is that every single step that you add to the customer to getting money sucked out of the wallet of the customer, right? is like decreases exponentially the chances that that's going to happen, right? And it is insanely the same with cybersecurity. And even I do this, right? And I think about it a lot, where it's like, okay, like, is any reasonable person going to go through this many steps when they're trying to do something, especially if they were trying to do something that they were already trying to do, and there's these things interrupting them from trying to do that thing? Like, the chances of people doing that, right?
Exactly. And people don't actually want to know. That's kind of the most I would say troublesome part for us. That when we ask people like, would you like to understand what's happening here, they don't
Yeah,
they don't really want to know. They just want the problem to go away.
right.
They
Or
don't
right.
want the details or what's happening or how can this could impact them. They just the most used feature is usually like swipe left to hide the notification. That's
Yeah. Well, that's super frustrating, because how do you make sure that they know that something's
exactly.
actually happening, right?
Yeah, that goes back to the awareness thing that I was talking about earlier. That we need to educate the people, but then how do you educate them when they don't really want to know? They just want the problem to go away. So that's
Right.
kind of the dilemma and the balance we're trying to find and solve.
Right. Yeah. Comes back to my rules of marketing about number one is that people don't read. It's not that people don't read, it's that they're trying to do the thing that they're trying to do, not like
Exactly, not
yeah.
what you want to do.
This it actually came up in I've been reading this book by Rory Sutherland. He's one of the founders of Ogilvy. It's like this big ad agency, and he wrote this book called Alchemy, and it's basically about irrational behavior and how you have to sort of harness it rather than expect that people will just follow rules or follow what they said in focus groups and stuff like that. And I was like, oh my goodness, like, not only that doesn't just apply to marketing, but like it definitely applies to cybersecurity, like
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%, definitely.
for that same reason.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
you said that things are changing, right? So the operators are understanding that they're the ones to take
yeah,
ownership of this, and they are seeing value from doing it. And I
yeah.
assume that value includes being able to make the customer aware that they've done something about it, and that's a value differentiation. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think one of the biggest things and biggest requests that we're seeing from our operator community lately is the ability to communicate the value back. I would say that started probably only like 2-3 years ago, because previously the communication was direct to the consumer, right? The consumer installs some sort of an app, whether it's on the router or on the device, and we tell the consumer directly that, hey, this is what we've done for you. This is the amount of files we scanned. This is the amount of links we protected and things like that. Now the trend is like that the operator wants to communicate those things to the customer, like
Oh
sending
yeah,
them,
okay.
this is what
Right,
we've done for you. Essentially, this is what you're paying for, right?
right.
And create value through that, and that's tremendously, and that's what people actually are reading and opening, and especially because it's personalized. It's for them. This is what happened to you.
Okay,
This is what
right.
we with you from. So it's because it's more personalized, then people are actually engaging a little bit more with it than if it's more generic
Right.
content.
Do they sort of bundle that together with any other service messaging? Like I'm the operator and this is all the stuff that we've done for you this month, right?
Some of them do. So like some sort of like weekly newsletters and so forth, where they might include some stats from various services, not just cybersecurity. But typically, like especially if the subscriber is paying for the service, they're trying to keep it standalone because then it's kind of real. Then it's like, okay, this is exactly what I paid for, and these are the results. But it varies. I mean, the user experience is kind of the unique angle with every operator. They all have their own approach and so forth.
Right. That's cool. That's cool. And I mean, one of the really cool things about Network X is that this year anyway, I mean, it was this kind of very similar last year, but you can see how it's sort of ramping up. Is that, and I experienced this from, not just from a QA Cafe perspective, but Broadband Forum too. Um, looking around and being like, oh wow, all of these people are my customers, kind of a thing, right? But also like just how everybody on the show floor are almost like everybody's partners now, right? So it's like
Exactly.
you guys going around and being like, oh yeah, this person has F-Secure on their stuff. This person has F-Secure on their stuff. This person, in addition to being on the show floor and selling to because what people often don't know about trade shows, or at least in our industry, is that the visitors, the people who are showing up,
Mhm.
are mostly operators. The exhibitors are vendors and applications, stuff like that. So for people like us, where it's like kind of both, where it's like, well, our customers are the operators who are coming here, but they're also the other people on the show floor too. It's kind of weird,
Yeah, no,
right?
definitely. I was actually doing an interview with one of the Network X organizers, and that's exactly the same thing I said. Like the amount of collaboration ongoing there and how real time it is, it's surprising. I had multiple instances throughout the whole show where we had a meeting with the customer, right? And the customer is like, hey, I'm deploying this and that router, and I want to understand how your solution works. And we want to make sure that you operate well with the router vendor. And then when they named the vendor, I was like, well, first of all, we're already working with them. Second of all, I can go grab the guy from the stand, like
He's
which is like
literally right over there.
exactly right. And then I was like, let's go chat to him right away and we'll figure this out, like right on the spot. And we solved many issues, like something that would have taken probably like 3 weeks over the email back and forth. Took probably like 15 minutes to solve.
Isn't that crazy? Because the other thing that I had always experienced, and I bet that this is the case in other industries, right? Like other trade shows where it's like mostly a sales experience. This time, and maybe a little bit before, the types of people that people are sending now is not just the salespeople, right? It's people like us and people, like just going over to some of the other booths. I was like, oh, you guys are the engineering team. Like I talk to you guys all the time, like hanging out at a trade show, right? And you don't usually expect that to happen.
And maybe it's because the audience is also rather technical as well. Like
Yeah.
they and like the people I met coming from the operators, like they're the guys who are designing the services. They're the ones who are deploying them and so forth. Not necessarily only like product or the business owners basically, or product managers and so forth. So that kind of levels it up, so you can talk to kind of your peers
Yeah.
on the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is this is not to just be some like drastic endorsement of Network X, but it was a good show. I had a good time. I'll definitely go back next year, and maybe we'll actually have a booth there next time.
Oh yeah, I already reserved my ticket, so I'm going.
Yeah. It makes me wonder if we should try to now that collaboration really is happening, like if we should go out of our way to organize certain certain powwows, even that are a little bit more official. So not necessarily coordinating any sales agreements or anything like that, but
Mm.
just getting everybody together to chat about a bunch of stuff, rather than having speakers just sort of talk at us, you know.
But that's actually how broadband forum has been facilitating that quite well, in my view, at least. And on
Right.
the events I've been to, it's more like peer-to-peer discussions and trying to solve concrete problems and so forth, rather than a bunch of salespeople running around from one meeting to another.
Right.
Right. So
Right.
that quite well.
I like that. It also means that I don't have to go as many places. I can go to one place and everybody's there.
Are
Uh,
you going to CES by any chance?
no, probably not this year, but we were just sort of discussing from broadband forum perspective, by the way, everybody on the show. I'm talking about when I'm doing standards representation. We were just kind of talking about that, and actually, that's a great segue to what the other thing I was going to ask about. Um, because if let's say it's not this year, but like next year,
Mm.
um, you, as we're seeing that final, we're sort of seeing the resolution of the separation that was consumer electronics and the consumer world, and the higher level networking and the operators being in two very different lands, right? Even the term CPE, right, is a very operator term, right? Customer premises equipment, for those who don't know. Um, uh, about just telling the story of how that line is now getting sort of blurred and maybe even erased, and what the future of that box is and what it's called now that we know it's getting smarter and it is now a platform, right?
Mhm.
It's becoming more of an appliance, right, in your house than it is this piece of networking equipment that's sitting on your wall. And so maybe that's a story to tell over the next year, and maybe in 2026 CES that will finally get the ball rolling. But I've always wanted to go there because I hear it's totally wild.
Yeah, no, definitely. And talking about the box, I like to compare it to I think like end of '90s, like mid 2000, like 2005, 2006, maybe something like that, when people had media streamers in their home.
Mhm.
And you had all your videos there. You had file sharing. You had
Oh yeah,
all
yeah,
the,
yeah.
all the
Back when we
torrent.
used to actually store local stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Everything that you were doing with it, right? And it was all kind of centralized. I think this is exactly where the routers are heading at the moment. You will have your Matter-based IoT controls in there. You have your Wi-Fi controls, obviously security in there. All the kind of home control elements. I saw already some demos. Somebody's doing Netflix type of caching in the routers, like CDN, like local CDN type of a
Oh
functionality.
wow. Okay. Okay.
So there's a bunch of use cases. Like I would say that in the past 2 years, I've probably seen close to 20 different apps that could live on the router, or if somebody's already working on those apps to be in the router. So it's definitely becoming a kind of a central hub, and I think it will also replace a lot of the existing devices. Like if you think
Right.
today, you have if you have lighting system in your house, you have some sort of a hub for those. Then you have hub for
Right.
your
Right.
camera. You have your Apple TV controlling some other devices that you might have,
It's
and
super
then
annoying.
yeah,
From a user
and
perspective, it's a real
yeah,
pain in the ass.
it is. Yeah, you have to control them all. You have to update them all. You never really want to go even there because it's so complicated and it's just a burden to work with those with them. And then now, if it kind of all centralized in the router, then you can create a unified user experience for that as well. It's
Right.
all in one place.
Exactly. Right.
Um,
Right.
and I think
And
this will,
anyone can own that user experience. The operators are in the best position to do so.
and they
Right.
can differentiate from each other as well.
Mhm.
So somebody in US can create totally different user experience from an operator in Europe, and it might be localized because people use things in different ways in different regions as well. Like they have different expectations from the service and so forth. So I think it's very
Oh, good
important that
point. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
all of those kind of services that are deployed, that they provide like APIs and SDKs and so forth for the operators so they can build their own user experience around it. Obviously, not everybody will do that. Like smaller operators don't have capacity to do that or funds and so forth. But the larger ones, like tier 1 and tier 2 players, they will definitely create more and more of their own user experiences around services on the routers.
Right. Just sort of as a side question, just because I love war stories, and well, I'll get to this question in a minute because you've told this story before, even a couple of years ago when we've done webinars together. But I want to know how things have sort of changed. And you mentioned spam, spam and scams becoming way worse. But like, so because I think about this from a testing perspective too, where like there's a certain amount of there was a time, right, where the vulnerabilities in the router itself were a problem, and making sure that people test for those things. Is that becoming less of a problem, and it's more sort of high level, over the top stuff where they're not necessarily trying to hack the device itself? It's more like it's more social engineering. It's more that kind of a thing, or do we still see a lot of the there still is exploit that's sitting around and it happened to get through on the gateway?
Yeah, I would say that the router manufacturers have done a very good job in the past, I would say 5 or so years. Like if I look at the routers that were deployed 10 years ago, they're still full of holes and nobody wants to update them because nobody's getting paid to do that, right? They've been for 10 years and they probably will serve another 5 easily. But the new devices that have been shipped in the past like 5 years or so are quite robust from a security point of view, like from the device perspective, like the device itself is protected quite well. The end user is still like, that's still our worry to solve, but the device itself is better protected. At the same time, when I say this, there is always a delay between when something is discovered and something is fixed, right?
It's very nature, right? There's no way it can't be that way. Yeah.
Exactly. That's why we started also looking into that, because even though the device manufacturer might actually patch things quite fast, they might have a patch available in like 2 days, and then it takes like 2 days for the operator to roll it out. It's still 4 days when something can go wrong, right?
Yep.
Now we've started to move also towards protecting the device itself because we're living on the device already and we have real-time update capability. So we can actually protect the device during those 4 days before the patch is there.
Cool.
Typical attacks in between.
Can you give me an example of that? So like, I assume it's something like all of a sudden you guys detect that the device is acting like it's a bot, right? It's acting like it's part of a bot network.
Even simple attacks, like if there's a vulnerability and it's let's say somebody's trying to DDoS into the device, it might be using that vulnerability, those ports that might be vulnerable and so forth. We can prevent that just by saying that, okay, this looks like a DDoS attack. We should block that regardless whether there is vulnerability or not. So that provides already kind of a first layer of protection. But then, as you say, like outgoing traffic, like once there's an infection on the home network, then obviously we would detect that from the traffic patterns and say that, okay, there's something wrong already on your devices, just disconnect that device.
Right.
But yeah, definitely the perimeter of the device, the security level has increased, but I think there's still room for adding additional layers from security vendors like us.
Right. And has the nature of the attacks changed over time? Well, like I was saying, you said it's more scams now, but like, is that really the trend?
It's more targeting the user directly because that's where the money is, right? The bad guys are always following the like. There's not a lot of cash to be made from the router itself.
Right.
What can you grab? You can take compute from the device, right? You can use it to mine Bitcoin or whatever, but it's going to take you quite a long time to mine a Bitcoin on a router.
For now.
But yeah, it's more about protecting the individual and kind of making sure that they don't end up with scams. At the same time, the IoT viruses haven't really gone anywhere. I mean, all the botnets and so forth, they're still there. They're still trying to attack, especially those older devices out there in the field, which nobody has patched in a long time and so forth. They are still taken over and used for various purposes. Primarily, that's like some sort of a data mining or just to showcase that it can be done. I think that's actually
Oh
still
yeah,
the case
right.
use case
Like
for,
credibility.
yeah, exactly. It's more like
Yeah,
something you put into your CV when you apply to cybersecurity company.
right. Oh, that's funny.
By the way, just a disclaimer: we would never hire anybody with those credentials. But
Well, I mean, they probably the people who know the best about it.
yeah,
Uh, Although I do remember this one anecdote from a guy from Trinity Cyber who we work with a lot. Was talking about how because they're detecting stuff on the WAN side. Um, how there was he heard about some gateways that were basically like they they were so vulnerable that they got hacked by multiple people who didn't even know about each other. Right? Somebody went in and they're like running all these things. He's like, wait a minute, what? It's like,
uh,
I don't know. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, it's a world that I think people, because it's the one thing my dad says all the time. He's like, "Oh, I just listened to your podcast, man. Now I just want to disconnect from everything." And it's like, you can't think of it that way. It's like there are people out there who are trying to make sure that this doesn't happen, but it's a never-ending arms race, and you just have to understand that it's a never-ending arms race, right?
I mean, I compare it to like driving a car. I mean, you might get hit by somebody like next corner, but you still don't stop driving because of that, right?
Right,
And that's
right,
actually
right.
that's almost as likely as getting scammed. I don't know exact statistics, but amount of collisions over there on the streets is quite surprisingly huge still.
Right.
Even and people still die on the streets, so and get hit by cars. So
Right, 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 right. It's like I sort of feel that way about privacy too, where it's like, you know, it's like, yes, you can go out of your way to never put any information of your own out there, but it's going to be an exceeding amount of work. So like you could flip it and just be like, okay, well, I'm going to act as if people know my information. You know?
I would actually agree to that up until maybe like a couple of years back, because previously when people were thinking about the privacy, a lot of people were saying that, hey, I don't have anything to hide, right? Why would I need
Mhm.
like why would I use a VPN, for example? I don't have anything to hide, and people don't really think when they say that, right? Because
It's-
everybody has something to
You don't
hide.
know what it is that you have.
Exactly, and up until like a couple of years back, people didn't really understand like, okay, what are these privacy measures for, and then how do they benefit me directly? Because there was no like visible impact or visible like something that they can say that yes, now I understand why do I need this. But I would say that in past couple of years, there's been a bit of a trend that people start to understand the link between the information that is exposed about you online and the targeted advertising and the scams and the spam that you're receiving, because there is a direct correlation. Like the more information about you is available
Okay.
online, the better the social engineering attempts against you will be.
Right. Right.
They can get leaked data about you. They might get access to some of the passwords that you might have to some services which you don't necessarily use that much, but they get in there. They can do things under your name, so it looks like more like you did them. They might reach out to a friend of yours and ask them to reach out to you, and things like that are possible. And the more we are trying to kind of remove the information about you online, the less targeted ads, less spam, less phishing attempts, and all the social engineering attempts you will get, because there's just not enough data about you. So if I would have an option to remove like all the data about myself from online, I would probably do that just to see like what the difference
Oh,
would
to see
be.
what changes? That would be
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
That would be interesting. Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's true. I mean, it's literally true. I see it all the time, all the time. Like I just a lot. There's a lot of political scams going on right now, right? So for a number of reasons, I'm registered as a certain party, but it's not because I actually vote that way. It was because of years ago that I wanted to vote in a particular primary, and New Hampshire's laws work very interestingly, where you have to register to vote in a primary, and then you can only unregister at a certain time of the year and all this, right? So I'm on these phone lists, and the texts that I'm getting are not legitimate. They're not. They're just a bunch of links to please send money to this location, but it's not real, right? They're all scams.
Exactly.
And it's constant. It's constant.
And same thing, like even over the mail. Like I just moved houses right from Connecticut to South Carolina, and I'm receiving a bunch of these like, hey, do you know that your insurance is not good enough for this house that you have? Which is checked with your insurance company, and your insurance company, with your mortgage company, and your mortgage company says that you're not insured enough and so forth. You get all these mail scams
Yeah.
trying to get you to buy a different insurance. I'm quite sure I will not be insured if I try any of those. But
Well, no, but it's preying on people who are either, it's one of those things where it's like it only works because they have the ability to do it en masse, right? So if you're
yeah,
able to do enough people, even if 0.01% of those people give into the scam, then you've made enough money to make it worth it, right?
yeah. And if the scam is like timely enough, and it's personal enough, then it's quite likely that they will go through even to the most kind of vigilant of us. Like I've been
Right.
scammed myself. Like it's
Yeah.
maybe like 7, 8 years ago, I got scammed for like $500 without even understanding it. And I've been in cybersecurity industry at that point for 10 years.
Right. Right.
So
Right. No,
if the time,
I have two. I have two. It was and I should have thought about it, but I was so desperate in the moment to solve this problem that was
yeah,
escalating quickly, right? It was tickets to an event. And
mhm.
it's like, oh, I have tickets. Oh, send me a Google gift card or whatever. And I'm like, wait a minute, what? I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And usually there is some sort of a, like personal attachment or urgency and things like that that kind of drive that behavior.
Yeah.
You don't think straight at that moment, in that moment.
Yeah. No, exactly. Exactly. Well, anyway, everybody stay safe out there is the point of the no. No, but I
Exactly.
mean, what I was saying earlier about the act as if your information is out there is not necessarily to say that like, oh, well, it's like I still lock my doors, but like it's like understand that as soon as you are online, there's a lot of things that you cannot control. So behave in a way such that it's, that those things are out of your control.
Exactly, because they mostly are.
Yeah.
Like the data that is available online about you is not even like controlled in any way by you in reality. Like it's
No.
gathered from everywhere else, like from social media, from local county registers which will give you information about like which house you live in and what's your phone number and things like that, which are all public.
Yep.
They will just gather them all together and sell it to whoever pays best.
Mm-hmm. So how is it that you guys end up stopping that stuff to get to go all the way
Oh
back to the gateway and those apps for the consumer? Like,
yeah,
is that all pattern recognition or is it like,
on the gateway it's actually quite hard to do like personal data cleanups, because the problem with personal data is it's somewhere else, right? It's not in your
mhm,
possession, it's not on your device, it's not on your router and so forth. It's some cloud service somewhere where you have given your information most likely, but you're just not aware that there was terms and conditions that will resell all your information that you
yeah,
enter
right.
here.
And your firstborn child, and you
Exactly.
clicked it.
Exactly. So you kind of are unaware where the data is. So the way that we're trying to protect against it is that we're essentially requesting all these data aggregators that are reselling the data and so forth to remove the data that they have on you. So basically, with our service, just give us your information. We track it down and
Oh,
see where it is available, and then we'll clean it up or ask them to remove it, because by law they have to remove the information about you.
right, 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 right.
And then we will remove it once, and then because of the nature of the business, they will go and gather it all again and buy it
Right,
all again. So six
right.
months later, they will have exact same information about you.
Ugh,
So we do that cleanup basically for you every like quarter or so.
it's cool.
So
I didn't know that. That's maybe I'll do that.
actually quite interesting, because you see kind of all the information that is available about you, and then you see how it's removed and all that. So
Neat, neat. So if anybody out there really wants to know how this works, it's like it doesn't just show you that it was cleaned up. It shows you a little of the inner workings of how it happened in the first place. That's really cool.
yeah, okay.
Yeah. Cool. All right, dude. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks for
Um,
having me. This was
I'm
great.
sure I'm sure I will see you very soon.
Oh, I'm sure.
Um, yeah. So it's just the final thoughts about um, this is changing, and there are companies like F-Secure that are um, focusing on the platforms that allows them to deliver this service to you, right? And so go out there and ask your operator about it, or go and check it out, because the more that this happens, the better it is. And it's I know I share this all the time on some articles and stuff, but that that graph from the questions that we asked to operators in that Omdia report, where we were asking what the most important things about the CPE are, and the fact that 70% said security, and the next best one was general quality, and it was only 50%, was extremely telling about how serious everybody is taking this right now.
Yeah, exactly. And I think people need to take this seriously, because it's not just about you and protecting your data. The power is really in mass, right? The more people are protecting themselves, the less these scams are, the less efficient they are, and people will go somewhere else. So, if you protect yourself well, at the same time, you're kind of protecting your neighbor quite well as well, because you're not spreading anything, at least yourself.
Oh, right. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Definitely. Alrighty. I will definitely see you soon. I'll let you know when this episode is up. And obviously, everybody, check out F-Secure. Please do subscribe to the podcast on YouTube or wherever you're listening right now, because it helps me do this. And above all, own the nerdy things that you love and have fun doing them. Thanks, Dmitri.
Thanks, Jason.